Hey guys, OG Albina here, bringing you guys another video. Today we're going to be doing another, tier list ranking type video pertaining to the draft format and stuff like that. More so a discussion video that we are totally ripping off of Dr. Slacking. He did this first, so definitely go check out his. I feel bad because I feel like every time he does one of these, I totally end up copying it. But this video looked like a lot of fun to make, and that video is obviously going to be, well, obviously, I guess you haven't really, if you read the title, I guess, obviously, but great start. It's going to be ranking all the tier 1 Pokemon in like a Galar Dex Wi-Fi type setting. And I ranking them against each other, which ones I think are better, which ones I think are, easier to build around potentially, or, just objectively better for a team. What you'd grab early round 1, what you would grab in round 6 as your second tier 1 because you pick in the top heavy draft, or what you would not draft because it should be in tier 2, because there are some of these that I do think that. We're going to be using the GDL tiers as a base, which I did have a say in for some of them, but a lot of them, they were voted on. A lot more of the borderline mons, whether that be borderline bannable or borderline tier 2, they were voted on. So some of these I do disagree with, and we'll kind of get into that here as we go along. But yeah, with that being said, I think it's time to jump in. First up, we have Mew, and anybody who knows the draft format knows this thing belongs right up here in S tier. Personally, I think Mew is too much for a limited dex format. I think it's probably, top 3 in, national dex on Showdown and stuff right now. Much less a limited dex where we don't have as many crazy pieces, and the, the power level is much more, separate from the top mons to the bottom mons and things like that. This thing is so versatile that in the hands of a right player, it can do amazingly. Now, the only time personally, some people may not like this if you haven't performed well with Mew, but I don't think that a good player, someone who knows how to utilize Mew, can do bad with it. I really do think it's that good and that versatile. I think if you draft correctly on Mew, which I guess like a quick little go on that, I think drafting on Mew is literally just drafting as if you don't have Mew, so you don't ever pigeonhole it into one certain role, so that you don't need to run Defog Mew. You don't need to run, Rocks or Spikes Mew because it's one of your 2 Stealth Rockers or Spikers. You don't need to run defensive bulky Mew every single week because you have no offensive fighting type checks and things like that. Is when it really thrives. And I think if you do draft run it correctly, this thing's going to be an absolute menace. It's going to tear up the league. You could be like, man, I lose to Nasty Plot, bulk up 6-0s you. You could be like, man, I lose to Dragon Dance Mew, and then Stall Breaker comes with Super Fang Taunt, Will-O-Wisp, and Psychic Talk, Psychic, something like that, and just really ruins your day. There's not many great dark types that beat this thing. This thing has a set, in my opinion, to beat every single Pokemon in the game, and I think that's invaluable. I personally think it should be banned. We voted on it in GDL, and we allowed it, and obviously went first pick to Leo, so that's going to be great. Real fun to try and play against and stuff like that. But with this next Pokemon, we're going to go from the top of Tier 1 kind of towards the bottom rungs of it. We're gonna have Azumarill, and personally, I think it's between C and D for me. So don't get me wrong, I do think Azumarill is a very solid Pokemon. I think its defensive typing is phenomenal. I think it's very difficult to switch into. The priority is obviously great, especially with Belly Drum. It can be terrifying in the correct matchup, but it's just not versatile enough for me. I understand it has, a few different sets it can run. I'm not the guy who says you run Banded or Belly Drum and that's it. AV is very viable. Perish Trap is, again, very good, and it gives you that grass immunity. So if your opponent doesn't prep for that correctly, and they go into their bulky grass to check the, to check the physically offensive Azumarill, and you end up hitting them with a Whirlpool and you Perish Trap them, that's not going to be very fun for him. But when comparing it to all these other Pokemon, I just really don't think it's great. Personally, I prefer a more defensive fairy. Again, it has a great defensive typing, but it's not the bulkiest thing in the world, and it does not have very reliable recovery. So I do think you have to draft another fairy on top of this, just because it isn't, the greatest, defensive fairy, and checking those types that you really need that fairy to check. So personally, I'm going to put it in C, because I don't think it should be tier 2. I'm going to kind of reserve this D tier for mons I think might be able to drop and stuff like that. I personally think it should be in C, but I think it's going to be towards the bottom as we kind of go along. Speaking of that, we're going to have my boy Sizor, and Sizor, I'm going to put it at the top of C. Sizor, a lot of people, especially this gen, they're thinking Sizor's a tier 2 Pokemon. It's never been tier 1. Why is it tier 1 now? I think a couple things kind of intermixed. I do think Sizor's a tier 1 Pokemon as of right now. I can see maybe in the next DLC a dropping depending on what gets added back and things like that. But as of right now, I think it's phenomenal. I think it is one of the best steel types in the format. I think it is so good. I think it's amazing. Great priority options, obviously, in Bullet Punch. The Technician is great. Stool Stab is very nice. You can be, you know, bulky pivot defog sets, or, you know, you can be banned, you can be swords dance. I've seen Scarf Scissor put in work. I've seen a plethora of sets really go and, you know, and really do work. And I think that's something, obviously, that really helps this thing. And I know this excuse has been tired out time and time again, but the lack of hidden power this gen, no HP fire, is freaking huge to me. I really think that really sets this thing over the top as, you know, a tier 1 bona fide, like, top, you know, one of the top steel types in the format, just because of how much it kind of makes up for its good bulk. Like, Sizor is bulky. It's not ridiculously bulky, like, man, I can't kill this unkillable wall. But I think when you aren't able to slap fire coverage on everything, its defensive typing is so good in itself that that really does kind of make up for it and stuff like that. Not being able to slap HP fire on everything, to be able to lure this thing and knock it out is amazing. It forces you to not have to run Akka as much as well, which I think is very, very good. It has great coverage. It's a great knockoff user. It got Sand Tomb this gen, which I think is really, really cool. We brought that in GDL week 1 versus Skyrander. We didn't get to click it. No, we did click it, but it didn't. We didn't catch the thing we wanted to catch. But that's obviously Technician boosted. It's a trapping move, just a little bit chip. I think that's clean. It got Psycho Cut for Toxapexes and stuff like that. You know, like bulky, you know, water poison types like Toxapex, Tentacle, things like that to be able to beat them. I really think in draft this thing thrives, and I think it's phenomenal, man. I think this thing's so slept on. Now, next up, we got T-Tar. Now, I don't think T-Tar is a good sand setter. I think if you're drafting, like, you know, Excadrill sand offense, that you want to go for a more budget sand setter. Personally, I love Giga with Excadrill. I think it's great budget, and I think it's, you know, a phenomenal Pokemon. But as a Pokemon, I think Tyranitar is amazing, and I'm going to put it in D. I think this thing is ridiculous. It's so bulky. It is so ridiculously versatile. It gives you a great rocker. It gives you, you know, a great, just, you know, special pivot with that crazy Spadef boost in the sand. It's incredibly strong, so banded sets go crazy. You can even run Scarf Tar in some matchups to catch some things off guard. It's great with the Lure Berry. You got Rock Polish, you got Dragon Dance. It can even be run special. It has a very, very usable special attack stat, like 100% usable. Actually, I'm going to check. Oop, I apologize. I'm going to check exactly what it is, so I don't sound like an idiot when I say it's usable, but I'm pretty sure it's pretty solid in itself. Let's see. Tyranitar. Yeah, I apologize. I'm looking over at my other monitor too. I'm not looking at you guys. But 95, this thing's just so bulky across the board. The only thing that's lacking is speed, but that's very, very, you know, able to be patched up very well. There's not HP fighting in the game anymore. Obviously, you have the 4x fighting, because it can be very, very scary. That's obviously not fun at all, and you're forced into a chopple a lot of the time with this thing. But I think this thing's versatility and sheer bulk and power really does help it. No Pursuit sucks. But at the same time, I don't think it's enough of a nerf to really knock this thing off its high horse. I think T-Tar is an amazing Pokemon. Now, we got Clefable next. We're going to throw Clef right in A tier. Personally, I'm not a big Clef guy, just because I like the more offensive, you know, powerhouse type mon out of my tier 1 pick. So I actually don't think I've drafted Clef, but you can't deny how freaking good this thing is, man. Despite its very, very mediocre stats, it has, like, the perfect combination of things that really help it thrive. That Magic Guard ability, having rocks, and having, you know, great coverage, and having Called Mind, and, you know, Wish, and Teleport, and things like that. Especially the Teleport, man. This Wish teleporting into all these crazy strong wall breakers is so annoying to deal with in draft. Just getting those free switch-ins, and, you know, obviously recuperating health, not really, you know, making the hazard game as scary, especially if you have something that, you know, really doesn't appreciate that, is absolutely terrifying. I think Clef is amazing in the draft format. It gives you a great rocker as well. It has the Unaware option for some, you know, potential really, really scary setup, which obviously is cool. It's a great fighting type check, and it has the bulk that it needs to live the hits that it needs to. It's very deceptively bulky. I mean, like, it's deceptively, actually, I think it's more so deceptively frail. When you think of Clef, you think like, oh man, I can't kill this thing, it's Clef. But if you look at its stats, it's only chilling with 95 HP, 73 defense, and 90 Spadef. It's not the craziest thing in the world, but just, honestly, the stat spread just lines up perfectly, where this thing lives so many hits. It's absolutely ridiculous. Usable special attack stack, especially go like, you know, Calm Mind Life Orb with that Magic Guard. You can even just go like Life Orb 3 attack. This thing can be very, very scary. You expect a really passive class to hit you with the Moonblast. You switch in your Steel type and you die to a Life Orb Fire Blast, which is terrifying. 60 is a pretty nice niche speed tier to outspeed some fat, especially if you want to catch them off guard. Go with a really fast Clef. I've seen Scarf Clef do some work in some games. I think this thing's really, really solid. I think it's obviously amazing. Not necessarily my cup of tea, but I do think it's great. You know, you can't deny that. Now, next up we have Rachi. Rachi, I absolutely love this Pokemon. This is a Pokemon I've drafted multiple times and I've had so much success with, especially in like a Galar Dex format where, again, you don't have that many steel types. This thing is just nuts. It's insanely bulky, obviously, with the 100s across the board. Lets it live pretty much any one hit of anything. The Psychic Steel typing is amazing. It's got momentum and U-turn. It's got, you know, wish support as well. It has crazy coverage. It gets BP for baton pass shenanigans if you're in a league that allows that for some reason. It can be physical or special. It has Calm Mind. Obviously, being Rachi and potentially going with that Scarf option, just flinching everything down is always really, really nice. Though I do think Rachi really does seem to not do as well when you end up, you know, kind of pigeonholing it into that Scarf role every week. I think this thing's too versatile to really run that every single time. Like I said, it gets Calm Mind. It gets Cosmic Power as well, which is terrifying for this thing. Great utility. It moves like Encore, Healing Wish. So I really do love Rachi. I think it's one of the best steel types in the format, and I think it's ridiculously slept on. I don't think it's super slept on. I think you'll know Rachi's good. But what I'm going to do, I think I'm going to put it... I'm going to put it at the top of B for now. Just because I think there's some really terrifying Pokemon on the... No, we're going to put an A. I think it's probably low tier A, as of right now. Now, next up we got Weavile. Now, Weavile, tier 3 Weavile. Man, this mod sucks. Why is it here? We're going to put Weavile in B. This thing is terrifying offensively to deal. Defensively to deal with. You don't really switch into Weavile very well. That Dark Ice Stab is really nuts, especially when you factor in you got things like Low Kick as well to really, you know, be able to put on some hurt. Ice Sharp for priority. If feeling really crazy, you can throw a big Swords Dance if you get something on a switch, or you could even go with like a Boots option. It did get Triple Axle recently, which is terrifying Ice Stab if you're not afraid of missing. Can be absolutely menacing. The only thing that really holds this thing back is obviously it's pretty bad defensive typing. And it's really, really low bulk. So most Scarfers are going to revenge this. Most priority is going to be able to deal with this thing. But this thing is just so strong. And the speed tier is so nice in the Galar Dex meta. While we did get some faster things back, it's still not a very fast metagame. And having that 115 plus speed tier, in my opinion, is really important in draft. You want to obviously space out your speed tiers, but you want to make it to where you have that elite Pokemon that's going to outspeed a majority, if not all, of your opponent's team. And Weavile's going to do that for you. Being able to outspeed those 115, 120 mons is obviously phenomenal. You're ridiculously strong. You got great priority option for those potential Scarfers. It's a great Dragon Killer. And it has, you know, the coverage that it needs. It's not crazy coverage, but it has the coverage that it needs to really, really do work. So, love me some Weavile. Despite some people thinking it's a tier 3 Pokemon, I think it's absolutely phenomenal. Now, next up we got Excadrill. And Excadrill, it would be a crime to put it anywhere else than A. This thing is obviously great in a draft format. I think this is a format it really does thrive in because you obviously have that Sand Rush option, which is really terrifying if you end up picking up a Gigalith or a Hippowdon or something like that. It can be really, really scary. But not only that, but it also has access to Mold Breaker. So those Rotoms of the world, those Levitate Mons, those Bronzong, things like that, obviously aren't great switch-ins either, and it plays that mind game of potentially bringing either or. Rapid Spin buff this gen was huge for this thing. I think it made Mold Breaker sets even better because you can still control the speed with Excadrill while getting rid of hazards and while still being able to hit those levitating mons and you know, things like that that might be able to kind of you know, sit and take hits from you a little bit better. It's a great rocker. Like I said, it's a great sweeper with Swords Dance and Rapid Spin and Sand Rush and all that good stuff. It does struggle with bulky grass a little bit, but you have ways to deal with that. Bulky waters especially too, but I think with proper team support, proper hazard control, hazard support, like, you know, getting spikes up and stuff like that in the field, Excadrill really does appreciate. I think this thing is an absolute menace if you build around it correctly. I absolutely love Excadrill. One of my favorite teams of all time has an Excadrill on it. I remember it was a Sun Sand hybrid team. Well, it wasn't really Sun. It was Zarud Y plus Sand with Gigalith Excadrill, and I had so much fun building with it. Excadrill's an absolute menace. It's so good in so many matchups, not only as a breaker, but as a great endgame cleaner or sweeper and stuff like that. And yeah, that's gonna be Drill. Now, next up we got Conk, and I'm torn because I love Conk. I think Conk is an amazing Pokemon. I think this thing is great, but it's very lackluster as a tier 1. In Gen 7, you can get away with it in tier 2 potentially. You know, this thing with the entire Dex, it was definitely not in the tier 1 level in my opinion. And Galar Dex is a little bit more to be seen. I think it might be, you know, probably the best tier 2 or one of the best tier 2s if you did throw it down there. However, I think it is by far one of the worst tier 1s. That doesn't take away from how strong this thing is. It's very slow, but it's very bulky. It's incredibly strong. It's got priority and under Trick Room. This thing is ridiculous to deal with. The Trick Room isn't the most reliable thing in a draft setting, just because it doesn't last very long in singles, especially too. You really have to play your turns correctly, and it can be very scary. But honestly, if you have great momentum, you have great ways of positioning and getting Conk in for free and being able to throw off big hits and stuff like that, it can go crazy. I drafted Conk once in Gen 8, and it was actually, wasn't my kill leader. I had it with Dragapult, and Dragapult Conk really broke through a lot of cores for me because I had other supporting things for bulky fairies and things like that. But I remember Dragapult had like 17 kills. I think Conk had like 15 or something like that. It was a great Pokemon. I absolutely love building with it too. It's so bulky too if you invest correctly. And it's not a mon that needs to be max attack every week. You can be efficient with your EVs and really go crazy with it. So I do love Conk. I think it might be borderline tier 2, but I'm really torn with it. I really am. Now, from one Pokemon I love to another that I love in tier 1 that, isn't necessarily loved by all, it's going to be Gothitelle. Now, if you watched our IBL Season 7, last season run, we had Gothitelle on our team, and our team was pretty bad. Our team was awful. We took over for someone pre-week 1, and we made some transactions, but there wasn't much left on the board, and it wasn't a very good team. But the team was pretty much centered around Gothitelle trapping things so that other mediocre and lackluster Pokemon could really go crazy, and that's what Goth did. I had so much fun building with this thing. It is so much fun, and it forces so much prep. It's obviously a tier 1. You can't put it anywhere else just because of the sheer amount of prep that this thing forces, and the fact that it can just win games on its own now. If you don't have a Dark type, Gothitelle is probably going to beat you. I'm a firm believer of that. I remember we played Brownie in IBL, and he not only did not have a grounded poison, he did not have a Dark type, and that is just Gothitelle food. I literally just got up a T-Spike, and got into my Gothitelle and set up Cosmic Powers and won the game. It did take a little long time because he was Clear Smog Gastron. That's what I trapped, but we were Taunt Rest, so we were able to kind of PP stall that thing out. And it's just disgusting how good this mon is and how annoying it is to play on Wi-Fi. And I think it can actually even kind of give you an advantage in where it's gonna like subconsciously tilt the hell out of your opponent because it's not a fun Pokemon to play. It's very fun when you're using it, but I hate playing against Gothitelle, especially if you don't have that good Dark or anything like that. This thing can just really go crazy on an opponent. I absolutely loved it. Scarf was another set I probably brought the most. I brought Scarf Gothitelle a lot. This is a great revenge killer because it's not the strongest thing in the world, but it has great coverage outside of not really hitting Darks very well. Other than that, it hits pretty much everything in the game super effectively or neutrally very, very easily. So I really do love Gothitelle. I think I'm going to put it right here in C tier, though. I think I'm going to put it at the top of C tier. I think it's just, while I'd rather have Sizor as an overall Pokemon, I think Gothitelle forces a little bit more as a tier 1. Now, next up, we got Ferrothorn, and I love Ferrothorn. I think it's another great Pokemon, but it's another Pokemon much like Conk that I think, due to a limited dex, we have it a little bit higher than really indicates how good it is. I don't think it's like, wow, I need to grab that round 1 Ferrothorn. I think it's a great round 2 pick. It's a great, middle of the draft pick, but it's very, very expensive for its pricing. I love it. It's a great hazard set. It's a great, physically or especially defensive wall in some cases, and it can be really annoying to deal with. But it's just not there for me as a tier 1 Pokemon. I think I'm going to put it right here at the top of D tier. It's something I could definitely see in the next DLC, dropping back to tier 2 where it was in Gen 7 when we start getting a lot of our old toys back. We start getting a lot of the big dogs back, which are going to be most of those legends that are included in the game right now. I really do think this thing could potentially just kind of drop off a little bit for us. I do like it a lot. Again, great hazard setter, and it really supports the team phenomenally, but just compared to everything else, it's not there for me. Now, Pokemon that really, really benefited this gen, not only from the dex cut, but just getting a lot of cool new toys. It's going to be Hydreigon, and I got to move my boy all the way up to A tier. I'm going to put him right here. I love this Pokemon. I love this Pokemon. I loved it in Gen 7. I thought it was criminally underrated last gen. By the people who were thinking like, it's a good Scarf and that's it. No. This Pokemon is phenomenal. It's got great natural bulk, a pretty decent speed tier, 98, not the worst thing in the world. It's very strong with a 125 special attack. It's got ridiculous coverage. The Dark Dragon Stab combo is ridiculously good, especially when you factor in the fact that you have that Flash Cannon to hit those Fairy types. You have, Fire Blast and Earth Power to hit those Steel types and things like that. You got access to Roost, things like that. You got U-Turn for momentum. You got Defog to support the team. And then this gen, not only did it get Dragon Dance, which is a cool buff, not the craziest thing. I have run Dragon Dance Hydreigon in the past. It's done very well for me. But it also got Nasty Plot. This thing being able to double its special attack with its bulk and its power and its coverage, nuts. This thing is amazing. I love Hydra. I think it's incredibly versatile. The things you can do with this thing, besides throw a scarf or specs on it, is great. I love bulky Hydra. I love, just Life Orb 3 attacks, Roost Hydra. It's so difficult to deal with if you have the right matchup. You have, if you're playing against a slower, bulkier build, it can be so annoying. And again, it has good coverage and it has a decent physical attack stat, so you can even go mix Life Orb in a lot of matchups and really do well with it. I love Hydra. Incredibly slept on. This thing is amazing. Now, next up we got Volk. Volk is an interesting case. I was definitely part of the group of people who thought, damn, Volk with heavy duty boots, broken. It's very cool. It's a very cool buff, and I think it really does benefit. I think it made it a lot better as a tier 1. I thought it was one of the more lackluster tier 1s in Gen 7, and I actually played with it in a couple leagues with it, and I had it in what do you call it, in tier 2. And I think that's completely fair in Gen 7 before the advent of heavy duty boots. But this gen obviously is going to be more of a bona fide tier 1 just because of that option, not really having to worry about the hazard game and really support it as much. Though personally, I'm going to put it in B tier. It's not a one-trick pony in the sense that it can't do other things. It's just that the quiver set is so good. It can obviously be Scarf. It has momentum and U-turn. It has defog, so it can be like bulky roost sets. Flame Body is a great ability. Even Swarm if you're like a mono Bug Buzz set, something like that. It's a very solid Pokemon. It's not the best. If it has matchup, it's gonna do well. But if it doesn't have that phenomenal Volk 6-0s type matchup, you're not gonna deal with it. You're not gonna, get the best results out of it, in my opinion. I think you really have to support Volk phenomenally. And it's still a Pokemon that can be outpaced by most Scarfers when it gets up to +1. And there's a lot of rock coverage in the game. And it's very frail on the physically defensive side. Very frail. So I think with the proper team support and stuff like that, it's very solid. I just don't think it's as good as we all initially thought it was going to be, with the heavy duty boots buff and all that stuff. Next up, we got Terrakion. I'm going to put Terrakion... I'm going to put it A, just because of the sheer power that this thing offers as I pull it up here. This thing is so ridiculous strong. It has a very solid speed tier as well in 108. It's a nice offensive stealth rocker. Fortune switches and get up rocks for free. Sword Dance and Rock Polish, and that tool stab combination is not resisted by anything in the game unless your name is Aegislash or Doublade, I don't think. And even then, you got Earthquake to bop those things too. This thing is just an offensive powerhouse. That rock fighting stab combo is just nuts. I absolutely love this thing. It getting bug coverage and Mega Horn is also very nice for those bulky psychics. Now Reuniclus could take a +2 Stone Edge. It's not taking a +2 Mega Horn unless it's Tango, which I think is really good. As I am getting a phone call, let me just text him. Recording. Sorry about that, but yeah, I think Terrakion's amazing. It's obviously not only a great sweeper, it's a great breaker, it's a great stealth rocker. I think if you support around it great, you're gonna have great results with it. Now, we're going right back into A tier with my boy Kyurem. Where are we gonna put him in A though? I think I'm gonna put him right behind Drill. I think Drill offers a little bit more to a build. I think Kyurem's great though. I think it's another Pokemon like Hydreigon that really appreciated the buffs that it got this gen. It got Dragon Dance, and people, especially in Gen 7, really forget how strong this thing is on the physical offensive side. It has the same physical attack as it does special attack. Granted, you don't hit Steel types very well on the physical side, but it's still very usable. So getting Dragon Dance and Icicle Spear as physical Ice Stab was very nice for it, but the big buff to this dude is going to be Freeze Dry. I think it's amazing that Kyurem does not have to rely on sub-toxic roost sets to beat bulky waters anymore. You can just be Specs Freeze Dry and kill everything. It has Earth Power for, potential Steel types, and it has, obviously, Dracos it can drop. This thing is ridiculously bulky as well. It gets access to Roost for reliable recovery. Boots is another great buff for this thing. It makes it a lot harder to revenge kill. Again, this thing's natural bulk is phenomenal. Subtoxic is still great, especially with the advent of Freeze Dry and things like that. So I think Kyurem's firmly cemented in A tier personally. I absolutely love this thing. Next up, my personal bias is going to shine through. I love Keldeo. I absolutely love Keldeo, man. Oh, man. Okay, I think what we're gonna... Okay, I think this is fair. I'm going to put Keldeo right ahead of Terrakion. Love this Pokemon. Its Dual Stab, phenomenal. Fighting Water, it's a lot like Terrakion. Maybe not as good, but its Dual Stab, amazing. Calm Mind is an option as a sweeper, phenomenal. Specs and Scarf and things like that, great. When you see Keldeo, you kind of think, one-trick pony, it's going to be either setup or a choice item. Yeah, that's true. You're also going to think, wow, this thing doesn't have great coverage. Yeah, that's true, but I think it gets everything it needs. I don't think it needs phenomenal coverage. I think Air Slash was nice for it. Being able to hit grass is a little bit harder. Is great. It also has Icy Wind to hit them and dragons, which can potentially deal with it because there's a lot of flying dragons in the world, which don't really care about Keldeo's dual stab. But this thing just puts on so much offensive pressure. And the fact, if this is, pre-DLC and stuff like that, might have put it in B just to be completely objective. But the fact that this thing got flip turn, whew, I think that's amazing. I think that is so good that this thing got flip turn. Being able to force in those bulky waters and bulky grasses that really stop you very well. And just flip turn on out of there, get in your breaker that deals with them afterwards is amazing. Having a good electric type to beat those those waters, and having something to break those bulky grasses as well. But this thing is very important. I think you need to support Keldeo if anything. Like you have to be smart with it. But I think it's absolutely amazing. It's a great Pokemon. It also has great utility and taunt and things like that it can potentially deal with these things like Sub Calm Mind, Taunt Calm Mind. Great stall breaking sets. Secret Sword being able to hit on the physically defensive side is amazing too, depending on the matchup and what you're facing. Something might be much more especially bulky, and you can throw off big old Secret Swords. But it also has Aura Sphere and Focus Splash, which is awesome. Aura Sphere is a cool buff too, because it gives you a more accurate special fighting stab. It's not Secret Sword if you want to hit something on the specially defensive side. So yeah, I think this thing is great. I absolutely love Keldeo. Now, next up, we got Alakazam. This is a Pokemon I really want to try. I don't have too much experience with Alakazam, just because I've never really gotten the chance to draft it. It's always been like, damn, I really want to try this thing, but there's other things that fit the team better. While Alakazam's a great Pokemon, it doesn't really fit too many roles very well, besides giving me that fast speed tier, I suppose. But having a bulkier Psychic is always very nice for those offensive fighting types. Though on the other hand, having that guaranteed Sashmon in the back that can always, potentially live one hit and throw off a big hit in return is always really nice as well. But personally, I think Alakazam is more so a product in Tier 1, much like Conk and Pharaoh, where it's here because the dex is limited. Though looking at everything else in Tier 1, it offers so much more value to a team. I'm going to put it right here at the bottom of D. I honestly think I might move this thing down to Tier 2 if it were me. I don't remember what I voted in GDL. I might have even voted for Tier 1, but the more and more I've thought on it, and the more and more I've seen people play with it in a Galar deck setting, I don't think it's as good as I initially thought it was going to be in this deck. Obviously, Nasty Plot is amazing. Getting off a guaranteed Nasty Plot with that Sash is obviously dope. Magic Guard Life Orb set's very hard to switch into. This thing hits a lot of the game very hard. You have Focus Blast for the Darks, you have Shadow Ball for potential other Psychics, and then you have Psychic Shock and things like that. Obviously, very solid. It has T-Wave for speed control. It has great utility. It's with Sash sets as well, and it's very scary offensively. It's just there's other Pokemon in the tier that are a little bit better in my opinion. I think this thing probably come the next DLC will probably drop in most leagues down a tier. Next up we got Aegislash. We're going from D tier right up to S tier. I think Aegislash is amazing. I don't think it's bannable like it was last gen, just because of the nerf to King Shield and the nerf to its defenses, but it's still amazing. This is one of the first Pokemon I used in Gen 8, and I absolutely love this thing. It's so bulky, it's so strong, it's so versatile. You can run bulky King Shield sets and lefties and Subtoxic and things like that. Or you can run SD, you can run Banded, you can run Specs, you can run so many things. I've seen Choice Scarf Aegislash do work. Like, this thing is so ridiculously versatile. Its defensive typing is insane. I think if you have good Wish support, you have good Trick Room support, maybe a Healing Wish Mon or two, this thing is just an absolute pain to deal with. I had it in APA Classic Season 15, I think, and it was my kill leader. I had it with Kyurem, and I had it reading for Trick Room and Healing Wish support. I had so much fun with this thing. As a defensive mon and an offensive mon, it can be great. You also have Autotomize to potentially sweep this thing as well. Like Autotomize Weakness Policy sets, Autotomize, like Sword Stance sets as well, which is obviously really solid. I love Aegislash, so I think it's definitely friendly to mention up there. Now, next up we got Halucha. Halucha is another interesting case. Again, Halucha is one of my all-time kill leaders. I think I have like close to 50-60 kills with this thing all time. I love it. I'd spammed it in Gen 7, especially early in the gen. But I think it's a little overpriced, personally. I think as a Pokemon, Halucha is a Tier 2 Pokemon. I think a lot of the time when you see it in Tier 1, it's to kind of punish people who are trying to draft terrain cores and things like that. And I think maybe in those limited decks, that's completely fair. just because of the fact that, you know, the Tyranitars are actually lower tier this gen, opposed to like the tier 1 Coco and the, you know, tier 1 Feeny and tier 1 Bulu and all that stuff last gen. So you're getting a lot of value if you draft a tier 2 Bulu. I mean, a tier 2 Lucha and like a tier 2, tier 3 Indeedee or something like that, or like a tier 4 Pincurchin or something. This Pokemon's great, though I do think it's very unfortunate having to play with 5v6 essentially. If you're bringing in Unburdened Halucha, the thing's pretty much sitting in back the whole time until you can facilitate a sweep with it. So it can be very, very difficult and strenuous on the team to have to kind of set that up, but if you can, this thing's very, very difficult to deal with in the end game. Or it can even just be a mid-game breaker, really punch through your opponent's team, break through something for something else in your team. I think Rillaboom with this thing is terrifying, which is honestly kind of reason alone to keep it in tier 1 right now. I think though, as maybe we get some stuff back, it might drop back down. But right now, I'm going to put it at the bottom of C tier because I do think it should be in tier 1 right now, personally. Now, Toxapex. There is no, at least in the folder that I have, there is no Toxapex, right? So, much like Dr. Slacking, I have Marini right here. They're both garbage in my opinion. Okay, if you don't know me, you don't know that I hate Toxapex. Not because I think it's, you know, so annoying to play against. I hate Stall. It's more so, I think it's shit. I think it's so incredibly overrated. I think it's so exploitable in a draft league setting. I think it's taunt bait, it's sub bait, it's setup bait. I know you get hazed, but like, you're still setup bait. You're still not threatening to me. And I don't like passive Pokemon, personally. That's a personal playstyle. I would literally never draft Toxapex. Never. I don't like it at all. Objectively, I know it's a good Pokemon. Though I do think it's a Pokemon that is not a tier 1 in a national deck setting. I don't think Toxapex is a tier 1 ever. I don't think anybody would really disagree with me. I really don't like Toxapex though. I'm gonna get so much crap from my buddies for this. I'm putting it at the bottom of D. I really don't think it's very good. I don't like passive Pokemon that can be very exploited. I know it's a great bulky water. I know it's a great ground of poison, setting up T-spikes, you know, supporting your team potentially, and in the right matchup, it could be very, very annoying. However, it's just the downsides and the potential ramifications for being exploited with Toxapex just don't make it worth me. I wouldn't draft this thing in tier 2 if I'm being honest, but in tier 1, it's a hard no. It's a never. It's a literal never. Now, next, we got our boy Komodo. Great Pokemon. We go from Pokemon I hate to a Pokemon I freaking love. I love this thing in Gen 7. I thought it was one of the best tier 2s in the format. Now in Gen 8, where you have a little bit more of a limited dex, you got Clanger's Soul added in there. I think this thing is absolutely phenomenal. It's incredibly bulky. It's got a pretty good defensive typing. Obviously, you don't appreciate fairy types, but it's pretty easily patched up with, you know, plenty of steals and poisons in the world and things like that. You have great coverage. You got Swords Dance, you got Dragon Dance, and Bulk Up, and Clanger's Soul, and Autotomize, and all these crazy potential setup options. You got Throat Spray as an item to potentially boost up, you know, just maybe even Autotomize, Throat Spray sets and things like that. I think this thing is great, and it always gets up its setup move unless you're trying to set up in front of a fairy type. Always. Got great abilities in Bulletproof and Soundproof, and Overcoat is niche in its own right. So I personally think that Komodo is a tier 1 Pokemon. I would put it right behind Drill personally. I think that and not even that, it's great defensively. You can be bulky rock sets. You can be, you know, a defensive set to check a physically offensive threat. Getting Body Press was amazing for this thing. It has such a fat defensive stat. I love this thing. I've run like Subtoxic. I've run Swords Dance and Bulk Up. I've run Dragon Dance. I've run every Komodo set under the sun. And every time I draft it, I love it more and more. I think it offers so much to a team. So we're going to put it right in A. A is very stacked right now, though. Part of me thinks, yeah, I think I'm going to move down to Rakion. Now that I'm seeing how much A is and how much more I like these Pokemon opposed to Tarak, I think I'll move it to B. But I love Tarak. And another reason I'm doing that is because I'm about to move another Pokemon right up to A. And I think that is Necro. Okay. Objectively, I think Clef is better. Personally, I prefer Necro. Another Pokemon that has set up out the wazoo. This thing gets Calm Mind, it gets Swords Dance, it gets Dragon Dance this gen, it gets Iron Defense, it gets Autotomize and Rock Polish. Crazy coverage. Photon Geyser being able to hit things on the physically defensive side or the specially defensive side is nuts. Very, very good. It has reliable recovery, Morning Sun. It's got rocks. It's got so many options. You could be a bulky Rocky Helmet Toxic set. It's a lot like Komodo. It's another Pokemon I love drafting every time I pick it up, just because of how versatile it is, and every single time I pick it up, I come up with more and more and more, potential sets. And it's another Pokemon that's so bulky, you're getting up your setup often. Even more so than Kamo, because you don't have that crippling 4x weakness, and you got Prism Armor to take less from super effective hits, and potentially exploiting things like weakness policy even a little bit more. Love this thing. I absolutely love Necro, and I think in a limited dex and in a format where you can be creative and things like that, it's great. And I think it's cool seeing Necro where it's a good Pokemon, and standard Smogon tiers. I think it's Yu right now, and it was RU last gen. It's cool seeing a Pokemon that's pretty good in standard, Smogon tiering play jump from being okay to phenomenal in just in the format change, just because of how much more creativity draft offers. I think that's really, really cool. Now, next up we have Zeraora. I've seen a lot of people put Zeraora in A. I think Dr. Slack put an A, and I remember I was watching Gray's video, and I think he had an A. I personally think that Zera is think it's an S tier Pokemon. I'd probably put it behind Slash. I personally think Zera is an S tier Pokemon. Again, I value speed so much, especially in a metagame like this, and having that elite speed tier to outspeed everything minus Electrode and Selgor and Ninjas is amazing. For reference, you outspeed Dragapult by 1 point, so you should be pretty much the fastest mod in the game at most times. Not only that, it's got very, very good coverage in fighting and grass for the ground types and things like that. It's got fighting and fire for steals that might potentially take it on. It's very, very good offensively. It can be special or physical with bulk up options on the physical setup side, with Corbinite on the special. It's got Volt Switch for momentum, and again, it's so ridiculously fast that in most matchups you can run a bulky Zeraora and still get a lot of offense out of it as well, just because you don't need to run max speed ever on this thing, unless you're playing that Dragapult. But even then, if you're aggressive with your creeps and you're creeping correctly, you can run 12 speed Zeraora and outspeed an entire team easily, which I love. If you know me as a draft player, I love those really, really fast elite speed tier mons. I'm sorry if the camera shook there. I actually kicked my desk. Oops. I love Dragapult, which we'll get to in a little bit. I have Zeraora and APA Evolution right now, which I may upload. Like a movie style thing. Let me know if you want to see that. I have Zera and APA Evolution right now. Love it. Mega Aerodactyl, one of my favorite megas of all time. Mega Alakazam, obviously phenomenal. I love the Pokemon that are so fast they don't have to run speed, like ever. And Zera is a big example of that. Being able to run barely any speed, so you can be much more fancy with your EVs and live pretty much any one-on-one hit, is amazing. So I think that's obviously great. Now, next up we got Melvino. I love Melly. I used it in early gen, and it did phenomenal for me. I think it's very good. I think it's a lot more versatile than people give it credit for. People think like, oh, you can run band or you can run body press, iron defense body press sets and stuff like that. I think there's a little bit more to it than that. I think AV sets are great. I think lure sets are great. I think sub 3 attacks is great. I think there's a little bit more to Melly than that. But it is a little bit, it does kind of fall into the category of it's good depending on the matchup. If you're playing against a great bulky water, it's a little bit more susceptible to be, kind of taken advantage of. You're obviously Rocky Helmet bait with your double iron bash, but it's so ridiculously strong and so ridiculously bulky. I think if you support this thing well with Good Wish, with Trick Room support, things like that, and then wants to potentially prey and take advantage of those bulky waters and things like that, I think this thing is great. It has incredible upside. Personally, I wouldn't put it ahead of Clefable or Necrozma, so I'm going to put it right behind him. I don't think it's quite an S tier Pokemon, but I do think it's great. I think it's a phenomenal pick. Now, next up, we got Slowbro. Personally, I think Slowbro, a lot of people are saying this Pokemon's only here because of Teleport, and people are overhyped about it. When we get more Mons, it might drop down. Maybe. Personally, I think Slowbro with Teleport literally makes it infinitely better. I'm already a huge Slowbro Slowking fan from Gen 7. So, it getting Teleport, getting that slow momentum with that regen is so ridiculously good, especially on bulky offense teams. I drafted Slowbro in NCP Showdown recently, which is a National Dex Showdown League, which is obviously not the meta that we're playing in right now. But I think it's a good example of the fact that I have legitimately used Slowbro pretty much every game besides one this season where I brought a setup set. I would switch it in, I teleport out, and I go into a Wall Breaker. I go into my Banded Zygarde. I go into my Mega DNC. I go into my Alola Marowak, and I put the hurt down. I think this thing is amazing just to support a team. It's incredibly bulky. It's a great bulky water. It's so so annoying. I personally think that it's in C tier for me. I'd put it ahead of Ozzy. I'd rather draft this as my water type than Ozzy any day of the week. I think it's great. Now next up we got Rillaboom, and before Grassy Glide, I don't think you can ever put Rillaboom in tier 1, but I think that addition really does send it over the top. Being able to Swords Dance up and then like priority stronger than extreme speed when you factor in stab and things like that with Rillaboom is really, really nuts. It obviously offers great team support. It gets U-turn, it gets knockoff, things like that. It gets fighting and ground cover to hit potential steel types, things like that. It gets taunt. The only thing that it really, really lacks is not being able to hit flying types very well, like at all. It doesn't really touch flying types at all. But I think with the proper team, you can really do some work with Rillaboom. I really want to try this thing out, especially since it did get that Grassy Glide buff. But personally, I'm going to put it right here in C tier ahead of Volcarona. I think these Pokemon have it. And another thing with these tierings, you're kind of noticing, I kind of value a Pokemon on what it offers to a team, opposed to how objectively threatening can be. How threatening in a matchup it can be potentially. Like, I think Rillaboom offers more to a team synergistically than a Volcarona or Weavile can in most matchups and most instances and things like that. Personally, I think Rillaboom offers a lot to a team too. I think it's great, and obviously, like we talked about earlier, that Rillaboom core can be terrifying to deal with, and you can draft some really terrifying terrain off. You can even draft like a Hitmonlee to potentially take advantage of it, which is really cool. So that's gonna be Rillaboom. Next up, we got Corbinite. Now, personally, I'm not on the big Corbinite train where everybody's like, "This is a top 10 mod in the format. It's amazing." Blah blah blah. I do think it's great. I think it's an amazing bulky steel. I think bulk up is terrifying. I think it's a great pivot. I think it's a great defogger. It's a great glue. It's a phenomenal glue. But to say it's like in the upper echelon of the format, I think is a little bit of a cap. Personally, I don't think that's great. Personally, I am going to put it in A tier. Personally, considering all these Pokemon right here, I am going to put it at the bottom. I think objectively we can put it over Kelp. I love Kelp though, and I love Kelp. But I think Corviknight is a great tier 1, but I don't see the hype that other people do. It's very bulky, but I think with the proper prep, it shouldn't really ever be a problem to most teams. Now next up we got Dracozolt. I'm gonna put Dracozolt right here in the bottom of D tier. This is a Pokemon that is incredibly strong, and I like it a lot, but looking back on it, probably shouldn't be in tier 1. It's very, very, very strong, and it can be very, very tough to deal with, especially with the advent of being able to use Sand Rush and Hustle, and Hustle has, like, legitimately no switch-ins. If you look at calcs, this thing has, like, no switch-ins. I don't think people realize how strong Bolt Beak and then the ground and Dragon coverage and things like that can really, really do. But obviously you have to hit there. Sand Rush is cool, but you only have that 100 attack, so you're gonna be relying on Bolt Beak a lot more. Bolt Beak is obviously incredibly spammable. Not as spammable as Fish's Rend, but we'll talk about this piece of garbage when we get to him. It might be, I think definitely by the time the next DLC, this is going to drop 100%. But as of right now, probably should drop. I think we might be overhyping it a little bit, personally. Now, next up we got Dragofish. Everybody's favorite mon. Everybody's, favorite mon. You click the fish button and you go burr. I don't like Dragofish. I really don't like Dragofish. I think it's so incredibly overrated in the league format. And a counter prep format where you know what your opponent can bring and you're specifically prepping for them. I think if you build correctly, even if you don't have your Jellicent, Vaporeon, Seismitoad, Water Absorb mon, there is still a lot of counterplay. It still has a very mediocre speed tier as a Scarfer. As a banned user, so provided you have good speed tiers and you position yourself correctly, it's not going to kill your whole team. It's not. I know a good Dracofish player can make it look phenomenal. I'm not saying it's a bad Pokemon, but I think seeing leagues ban this thing is ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. When you see people ban it, I think it's people who watch a lot of Smogon content and are like, this thing is ridiculous in Smogon, which I do agree. It's very over-centralizing Smogon. And I think it's very good in the draft format just simply because of how much prep it forces. I don't think it's a bad Pokemon at all. But I think people overvalue this thing. I really do. Personally, I'm going to put it at the bottom of B tier. I would rather draft a lot of these Pokemon in C, but I think solely because of the amount of prep this thing forces and the good matchups it has, it really does go nuts. I think it's at least in B tier. But the people who are banning this thing before they ban Mew, Aegislash, and all that stuff, no way, man. There is absolutely no way to me. Call me crazy, but I really don't. I don't think Vish is that good in a draft format. If you're a player who knows what you're doing, you're gonna have counterplays with them all. I really do think so. Now, next up we got Dragapult. We got a Pokemon that's very hyped up by the community, just like Dragofish, but I think this one is with merit. I think this is by far the second best in the form right now. I think Mew is still better, but I think this thing is amazing. Obviously, you have that phenomenal speed tier in 142. You're outspeeding everything, unless your name's Zeraora, Ninjask, a Selgor Electrode. You're outspeeding it, which is great. Its dual stabs, great. Its utility options, great with T-Wave and Will-O-Wisp and Sub and Disable and, you know, things like that. You can go Mix, you can go Dragon Dance, you can do a lot of things. This thing is so incredibly versatile, and I think there's a Dragapult set for every matchup that can really do work and potentially even win. I loved using this thing when I drafted it. I really want to draft it again. Haven't gotten the opportunity to because my draft spots have been garbage, but I think this thing is ridiculously good if you support it correctly. If you get good hazard control, if you get good breakers to get in on its U-turns and things like that, it's great, man. I absolutely love this thing, and I think it might be overhyped by some people sometimes, but I think it's definitely got merit to at least be the second best modern Galar Dex Wi-Fi format. I think it's great. Now, next up we have Urshafu Rapid Strike. Now, I personally really like this thing. I think people think of it in a Smogon setting, and they're like, man, this thing's not as good as the Single Strike. It's barely used at all. You got to keep in mind this is draft format. Keldeo, another Mon. Not really using Smogon singles. I think it dropped to UU actually this time, which is crazy. I mean, understandable. There's a lot of things in the OU metagame that really check it very well. Does that make it a bad Pokemon in draft? Not at all. You're not playing Toxapex every week. You're not playing Clefable every week. You're not playing these Pokemon that deal with you super well every week. It's just not happening. That's the draft format. And to be fair to Keldeo, a lot like Urshafu, which I'm going to talk about, there are Keldeo sets that exploit and prey on those Pokemon that beat it in the higher tiers. It's just that Specs Keldeo and things like that are a lot better than, like Taunt Calm Mind Keldeo or Sub Calm Mind Keldeo or something like that, that can really exploit something like a Toxapex. Urshafu was a lot like that, I think. I think the Water Fighting Stab is phenomenal. This thing gets U-Turn, it gets Aqua Jet for priority, it gets Bulk Up, it gets a bunch of things like that. I have it in a Nadex League. Again, not a great comparison, but I remember I brought Bandit week 1. My opponent didn't have Switch, and it's not as good as Urshafu Single Strike, but I do think it's a great Pokemon. I really do think it's a great Pokemon. I think it's very, very much so worth drafting. 100%. I'm going to put it in B tier. Personally, I'm going to put it ahead of Weavile. I'm going to put it ahead. Again, it's hard to say because this just came out, but looking at it on paper and building with it very seldom, in a few weeks here with my team I drafted for in GPL, I really do think this Pokemon is phenomenal. I think Rillaboom offers much more to a team. We're going to put that there. And next up, we got Single Strike. I think Single Strike is also going to be right up here in S. I think this thing is ridiculously hard to switch into. Wicked Blow plus Close Combat is terrifying unless you're a Fairy type, but I got U-Turn, I got Poison Tap, I got Iron Head, I got all that stuff. I get the Bulk Up. The Guaranteed Crit is phenomenal. And again, that Dual Step combination, think of a low tier mon like Pangoro. It's still very, very hard to switch into, but it's much more exploitable because it's much slower. This thing has a good speed tier, and if you got Sticky Web support, something like that, this thing can be so terrifying. I had to build and play against this thing in a league last week, and it was not a fun time, man. It was not a fun time. This thing is so ridiculously strong, and you look at the calcs of this thing. Good lord, it's got good physical bulk as well. Sucker Punch for priority for potential, faster mons as well. So this thing is great. I really do like Urshafu, and I really want to try either one of these in a Wi-Fi setting. I think they would be phenomenal. Then next up, we got Zarud. Now, this is a Pokemon I drafted in BDR, and I will say, I think people should own this a little bit more than it deserves. I think this Pokemon is much better than people really give it credit for. But it's not a tier 1 Pokemon. It's not. I'm personally going to put it ahead of Alakazam. I think it's a little bit more versatile than Alakazam. I think it offers a lot to a team, in all honesty. I think its offensive stab combination is great. I really do like Dark Grass, especially with the fighting coverage and the rock coverage, hitting, steals and flying type subsequently. It gets access to Bulk Up. It gets access to, I believe, Taunt. Let me make sure it actually gets access to Taunt before I say something out of context. Yeah, it does get access to Taunt. It gets Iron Tail for fairies, Encore. I really do like Zarud. I think it's very slept on. But it very much so does have that new toy syndrome. It's not a great defensive grass, despite being pretty bulky. People sleep on this thing's bulk. 105 HP, 105 defense, 95 speed F. That's very, very bulky. It's just the fact that you're that 4 times weak to U-turn. isn't the greatest thing in the world, and you're going to want to use the thing in a more offensive role, so you're going to have to patch up a bit of a ground resistance later on if you do end up drafting Zarud. But I love it, man. I think it's great. I really do think it's a solid Pokemon. Not quite tier 1 level to me. So I'd probably drop it down to tier 2 if I were to do another draft, but still very solid. And lastly, we got Gengar. Personally, I'm going to put Gengar in C. I do think it's a tier 1. I do think it's a tier 1, especially in a Galar deck setting. This thing is very strong. It's pretty fast. It has great coverage, and Nasty Plot is a great addition in specific niche matchups. I think it's a little bit overhyped, the fact that it got Nasty Plot, because it very seldom finds that opportunity to set up. But with proper positioning, potentially with screen support, it can be very, very terrifying. I personally am not a big fan of Gengar. I've drafted it multiple times now, and every single time, on paper, it looks great, man. This thing is so strong, it has great coverage, yada, yada, yada. It's a great revenge killer. But it always comes up just short of the role it's trying to fill, in my opinion. Scarf sets, great revenge killers, but it always comes up short of that KO. Nasty Plot sets, very good sweeper, but you're always going to be outspeeding revenge by something, by some Scarf or by something like that. You're not the bulkiest thing in the world, obviously, so it just comes up short, in my opinion. In a lot of those things, I think if you have good hazard control, though, and you chip things down, Gengar can still be very good, and I think it's a good Pokemon. I just think it's a little bit overhyped as a tier 1. I don't know if I would draft again. I would probably try it again, just because I do enjoy Gengar. I think it's very solid. But not the most amazing thing in the world. Not as good as I thought it was going to be in Gen 8 with that Nasty Plot buff. But yeah, that's going to be our list. Let me know how wrong you think I am. Because I know a little bit of personal bias did shine through this list. I know that for a fact. I got Dragofish and B tier. I know people are going to scream at me for that. I know people are going to scream at me for that. Oh, I'm sorry that we had an ad playing there at the bottom the entire time. Oops. But yeah, let me know what you really disagreed with on my list. And again, go check out Dr. Slacking. I think his list was phenomenal. I really do enjoy his content, and I feel bad for looking at his videos every time I see him upload one. But it just looked like a lot of fun, and I figured I could provide my very, very juiced takes and kind of talk about it here a little bit. But yeah, that's going to be the video. If you enjoyed, be sure to drop a like. And if you're new here, be sure to drop a sub. We are so close to 300, and I know a lot of my views are people who aren't subs, so if you enjoyed, be sure to drop one for me. I would really, really appreciate it. It helps me out a lot, lets me know you're enjoying it, and I really do want to hit that 300 milestone soon, so I would really appreciate it if you help me out in that. But yeah, that being said, I will see you guys in the next one. Later.